Shit with Ostique, the podcast series where we chat about shit with inspirational people from all walks of life. Today, we are joined by the wonderful and inspiring Alannah Simpson. We hope you enjoy this conversation. Alannah, welcome to Chatting Shit with Ostique.
Hello.
Thank you for being here. So today we're going to talk all about pregnancy and birth with Stoma. And I'm really excited to talk to you about this because I know you quite well, so I'm very excited to delve into it. But also it doesn't feel like that many people are having these conversations. So for a lot of ostomates who kind of are perhaps thinking about conceiving and will have some questions that they want answered and they aren't sure where to go to, hopefully we'll be able to provide them with that today. So before we
Definitely.
kick off, could I ask you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about how you came to have your stoma?
Yep. So hello, I'm Alannah James, and I'm also known as my blogger name, which is Glittery Guts. I'm 28 and I live in Scotland with my partner, who also has a permanent stoma, and our son Odin, who is 18 months today. So I got my
Ah,
stoma. I know, I got my stoma almost 8 years ago now, and I can't believe it's been that long. And so basically, I had sepsis, which is where the bowel gets really infected, and obviously that leaks into your bloodstream. The reason that happened is because the Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis within my large bowel and my rectum was so severe um, that nothing was working. I tried different, chemotherapy drugs, immunosuppressants, steroids, suppositories, enemas, things like that, and it's funny how it came about because actually it was planned a week ahead before the emergency surgery happened when the sepsis took hold. But they said, like we don't have any options now. So, my surgeon came and spoke to me and he said, so we'll plan it for next week and I'll see you then. And I was like, okay, okay. And 2 days later, I got really, really bad symptoms of like all only I can describe as like really bad sweating that I couldn't control, but I was shivering like I was freezing cold, but I wasn't. I was feeling severely nauseated and really quite like not with it at all. Like I felt like quite delirious, like I was sort of drunk or something. Um, and I'd had all my windows open in my hospital room, and all the nurses used to have a wee laugh and come in on their breaks just to have a little like cool down because it was so hot on the ward. But the doctors would come in on the morning round and, oh my gosh, Alana, it's freezing in your room. So then I got whisked away, down to surgery, and then I woke up with my stoma. And then a few months later, after that, I got my Barbie butt for a very similar situation. I had sepsis again, and nothing was working, so I had my Barbie butt done a few months later.
and when after you had your surgery, so it feels like a lot of people that were suffering with really extreme symptoms before the surgeries, they seem to have a real shift in how they feel after the surgery. So many of the symptoms kind of died down to an extent after that. Was that your experience or yes?
Yeah, so it was very odd because obviously you're in pain because obviously I had, so I was cut open under my belly button, but then the rest was keyhole. So obviously I was really, really sore from that. But
Mm.
instantly when I woke up, that gut burning pain that I had and the severe cramp and just the most horrendous pain I've ever experienced was gone. It was a very odd thing because obviously here I am like, oh, like I've been, cut open, but that
Mm.
pain from my disease was completely gone.
That's amazing. Everybody says the same thing. It's incredible that
Yeah,
the pain, it's
it's
sort of like
very odd because you're
a
sat there
pain.
like, oh my god, like I'm so sore, but at the same time you're like, this is really odd. Like all this pain
It's a
I've been living with for
different,
years isn't there anymore. Very odd.
but amazing, I suppose. So after your stoma surgery and also your Barbie butt surgery, how long after that was Odin, your son, conceived?
Oh my gosh. So we're coming up 8 years this year. So I think I was around about, excuse me, um, just almost 7 years. So it was would have been 7 years in the June that year, but I fell pregnant in the January. So between 6 and 6.5 years.
And before you conceived Odin, did you consult with any of your kind of team of people, gastro team or whomever it might have been, to say, I'm thinking about having a child. Is there anything that I should know given that I have a stoma? Or were those conversations not a part of the journey?
So very early on, way before Odin, I had multiple pregnancies and I miscarried every time.
I'm sorry.
And because after my surgery, my Crohn's went to my pelvis, so it was in my vagina and my perineal area, and it's also known as either perineal Crohn's or fistulating Crohn's.
Yeah.
So then it affected, obviously, like inside my lady parts and my pelvis. And they said I hadn't. So at this point in 2017, I hadn't had a period for about 9 months. But it wasn't due to pregnancy or anything like that. They just had stopped. I think it
Mhm.
was between 7 and 9 months, and I was in hospital, and my perineal pelvic Crohn's was in a really bad flare, and I had really bad arthritis in my knees, so I was admitted. My consultant came and held my hand, and he said, "I'm really sorry, Alannah, but we don't think you're going to be able to have children. Um, Getting pregnant isn't the issue for you. It's that your body is rejecting the pregnancies, almost like a foreign body, because of your Crohn's being active and things. It's just we don't think it's going to happen. I'm really, really sorry." So that was really difficult to hear because all I've wanted to be is a mum at that point. And obviously, I never found the right partner, or my health was never good, and I thought it's never going to happen for me. So it's not much I can do about it. But I did grieve, and you know, um, I was really upset. And then in 2018, I was really poorly and very, very badly bedbound, and I had really bad sinuses infections constantly for weeks,
Oh.
and I couldn't keep anything down. I was really sick, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to go to hospital because I can't cope at home anymore. And I can't remember what night it was, but it was a nighttime anyway. And she's like, "Oh, do you mind if we do a pregnancy test? Because young women, it's just protocol that they do that." And then I just laugh every time because I'm used to that. And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, sure." And then she was like, "Are you okay for your mum to be here?" And I was like, "What's going on here?" And she was like, "Yeah, so you're pregnant." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "Are you sure?" And she was like, "Yeah, all the pain, but she says we were scared it might be atopic and we need to get you to hospital now." So I went through it. It must have been about midnight, but it must have been about 1 in the morning before I actually got a scan. Um, and they'd offered me to see the screen and things like that, and I said I can't right now. And I
Mm.
think I was about 8 weeks when I found out. But I was so malnourished. I was so skinny. I like couldn't eat. Um, like I say, I was bedbound, and I was such a high risk pregnancy, um, that we all felt it was in my best interest to have a surgical termination. And it's not a choice I made lightly because, as I say, all I wanted was to be a mum. But the lady that had done the termination had said that there was a huge risk of either me and the baby um, possibly not making it, or maybe the baby wouldn't make it. And I didn't want to not only put that pressure on Jamie to be a single dad without me, but then also, um, to have to go through like such a significant loss later on during the pregnancy. So, at that point, that was the furthest I'd ever made it in pregnancy, and I had it in my head that I was like, right, okay. So I've not actually had fertility testing to say I can't have children because obviously, as they said, getting pregnant wasn't the problem; it was
Mm.
carrying. But because I'd made it that far, I thought, I don't know, I think I maybe want to try now. And I didn't try until a year later, and I fell pregnant again, but I didn't know until I miscarried. Um,
Oh,
and then a few months later is when I fell pregnant with Odin.
wow,
So
what a journey for you to go through. I find that really interesting that something switched in your head where they had obviously you had been told that your body wouldn't necessarily be able to do something or wouldn't want to go through that process because it had a lot of other things it was dealing with. and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden you suddenly find out actually you've carried for a lot longer than what you ever had before, and then something switches in you and you suddenly think, actually, I can do this. Like my body's going to do
Yeah.
this with me. How
I also
amazing.
had a lot of support online as well because a lot of women who go through Barbie butt surgery do experience the same thing where they're told they can't have children, but they are not given that fertility tests or like my situation, they can't carry. Um, but I thought, well, no, surely if I could get pregnant in the first place and, before I would never last more than maybe 3 weeks, maybe four at a push. And I thought, no, like, I really want to give this a go. Um, but then obviously after the last miscarriage, after that, I thought, right, well, you know what? It's just not going to happen. And I've got my dogs and I've got Jamie and there's lots of other things I can do with my life and I made my peace with it and stopped stressing about it because I was really stressed because I was just like, "Oh, I just really want a baby." And it was never happening. And then obviously the miscarriage, but then when I fell pregnant with Odin, I was like, "Oh, no, surely not." And I was in so much denial. Like that is the hilarious part. The midwives would literally just laugh because I'm like, "Oh, I don't know what it is. Like I can see the baby on the screen, and I know I'm pregnant because I'm very sick and very bedbound. And I did 5 pregnancy tests, or was it three? 3 or 5 pregnancy tests. I can't quite remember because there
Just to
was
check
one at the
again.
doctor's. And I was like, no, like surely not. And even whilst I was in hospital having it, I was like, can I have a baby? Really weird, but
I
crazy.
totally
Yeah.
get that. I've seen you post about the fact that pregnancy was a real roller coaster for you. And I guess I have two questions for this, but just to finish that
Okay.
thought, I've also seen you post about that women can feel a lot of pressure for a pregnancy to be like the most amazing 9 months of your life, and it's all Mother Earth and glowing skin and all of this. And the reality is, for a lot of people, that is not how that experience is. And it doesn't mean they're not grateful to be pregnant or to be bringing a child into the world. It just means that the day to day during that time isn't the most wonderful moment of their life. And yet, we're expected to say that it is because people don't like to hear that it might have been difficult. So I'd love to hear what the pregnancy was like for you, and then also how sharing it and kind of people's comments might have made you feel.
So pregnancy was really hard. um, I was severely ill, um, but not in the way like how I was with the last successful kind of pregnancy. This was more just to do with my chronic illnesses just being like heightened. So I developed gallstones. I developed hydrophorosis in my left kidney, which is where the tube between your kidney and the urethra has like a kink in it, or excuse me, like inflammation. And then I was diagnosed with bile salt malabsorption, which again is to kind of ties in with your gallbladder and how like bile acid is absorbed into the bloodstream and things like that. And I had really severe PGP, which is pelvic girdle pain. I think it used to be called something else, but I think up here in Scotland we call it PGP, which is where the baby sits on your pelvis. It's kind of almost like how can I explain it? Like the weight of the baby and the pressure and also the hormones in your body soften your joints and your bones.
Mm,
So they become a lot more sensitive and you also become a bit more flexible. So with your hips, because you're carrying that much weight, it's the constant pressure, and it can cause like really bad pain. And it can leave a lot of women reliant on crutches or in a wheelchair. Like
oh my
it's
God.
really bad. And I was getting the most horrendous chronic migraines because of the hormones with the
Mm,
baby. Um, so it was very, very difficult. I was very sick. I was in a lot of pain. And then between the second and third trimester, my stoma prolapsed. And then on top of that issue, because my bile salt malabsorption was really bad, it was burning through the flange of my bag and onto my skin. So I would stick a bag on, and maybe like an hour later, the bile and acid had actually just melted away the flange, and my skin
Wow.
was just red raw. And it made me feel really quite suicidal at one point because I just wasn't getting a break. Like I would lie awake at night unable to sleep because my skin on around my stoma was burning so much. But the pain was making me feel physically sick, but then I couldn't move to go and be sick, and then I had to move because kept having to pee every 5-10 minutes.
Ugh.
um it was really hard. And then I feel like the pressures that I had made it even worse. Um and I received a lot of bullying and trolling at the same time as well. And the comment that always has stuck with me that has just been so awful um, was that I'm not the only person that has Crohn's or a stoma to get pregnant, and that I got pregnant for attention. And everything that I was documenting my life during pregnancy, I was attention seeking. And I was just like, that's not what this is about. Like, this is me sharing the reality that pregnancy, even for a healthy person, like it is literally a luck of the draw. You're No two people are going to have the same pregnancy. Some people might, and might just, reminisce and really enjoy it, and go through it together and be like, oh, like I feel the best I've ever felt. And that's so good because I have come across people that have felt better during pregnancy than what they did before, especially with like IBD or something like that. And so, I felt really pressured because all you see in the media sometimes is like the pregnancy glow, they call it like that, and they'll recreate makeup looks on that pregnancy glow. Um, it is not like that for some people. And another issue I did have was blockages, horrendous blockages, and that actually can be quite common even with people without a stoma, with IBD, because obviously the bowel and its nature and how it is can have lots of inflammation, and so it
Mm.
can have narrowing and strictures and things like that. So I was on mostly a liquid diet throughout my pregnancy, and I was so naughty because all I wanted was chips all the time. And so literally what I would do is if I was craving chips, I would eat chips and then I would just be straight back to liquid so that I could kind of balance it out a little bit. But it didn't matter. Even on the liquid diet, I was still getting blockages.
I'm so sorry. When your stoma prolapsed during the pregnancy, what kind of action did you have to take for that?
Uh, well, my stoma nurse, bless her, was so good with me. So she's not my original stoma nurse because I moved away from where I was when I had my stoma.
Mm.
The stoma nurse works at a different hospital closer to where I am now. So we tried like 3 different or 4 different types of ostomy bags. I tried flat bags again because I use convex. So we tried the flat bags, that didn't work. So then we tried the flat bags with like a convex ring,
Mm-hmm.
that didn't work. I tried things like, airing it out, and obviously I had to keep cutting my bag different each day. So like some days, so normal for me is about 25 to 30 millimeters in size of the stoma.
Yeah.
During pregnancy, sometimes it would swell up to a colostomy size of like between like 50 to 55 millimeters. It was so
Wow.
swollen. So it would just be kind of a guessing game and kind of um, adapting my stoma size to the time I was changing my bag when I needed to. I tried everything and nothing worked. Um, and obviously, it wasn't bad enough for surgery, so it was kind of just a case of trying to get on with it until baby arrives, pretty much.
Yeah. And I don't know if you do take a lot of medication on a kind of daily basis, but I'm assuming that for people who do, obviously when you're pregnant, they tend to want you to be on as little medication as possible throughout the duration of the
Mhm.
pregnancy. What was that like for you? Were there any medications that you perhaps relied upon normally for kind of pain management, for example, that you were suddenly unable to take? And what would that be like for you?
That was the hardest part, and actually, what friends and family commented on the most is how much sacrifices I made during my pregnancy to keep Odin as healthy as possible because I did have the choice. So in early pregnancy, there's certain types of anti-sickness medications you cannot take because there's a risk of something called a cleft palate, which is where the
Yeah.
top lip doesn't form together properly. So I changed that. I went back onto another one and stopped the other one. Um, and it felt like a lifetime without it because even though I was on the other one, it would just make me sleep all the time. But then I couldn't sleep because I'm in so much pain and then I needed to pee all the time. So it was just a case of hobbling by and struggling until I was further along enough to take the other anti sicknesses that I could take. And then pain wise, I normally would take like an opioid called tramadol.
Hmm.
Couldn't have that. And I actually could only take paracetamol. And because of my allergies and side effects from other pain medications, I couldn't take anything but paracetamol and hot water bottles and things like that. Um, so when I was admitted to hospital before having Odin, so I was in for almost 3 weeks in total between the time of admission, C-section, and getting home. For the so from 35 weeks to 37 weeks, I was on tramadol, and I was also on budesonide, which is a type of steroid. Um, and I was on that from I think the second trimester to try and kind of control the inflammation going on in my body. Because they weren't sure if my stoma issues were just like pregnancy related and prolapse related because I was
Mm,
actually having ulcers on my stoma. So they wanted to do it more precautionally just to see if it would help my symptoms. But it's hard to say if they really did do anything, but I think it was better to be safe than sorry. And
yeah.
I was only given the tramadol in hospital to the point where I was literally in tears. That's the only time I would take it during the day or in the middle of the night if I woke up like crying in pain. That's the only time I would take it. Um, and there were I knew the potential risks with that, but I literally just was struggling so much by this point.
Mm,
So they brought my C-section early to 37 weeks. And that helped a lot because I felt like I couldn't continue for much longer. I was just severely, really sick.
yeah. I'm sorry to hear that, and I'm sure that's the case for a lot of people and needing to make that
Yeah,
decision between you being okay and making sure your baby is okay. That must not be easy.
it was
Um,
very, very tough.
when it comes to C-section, what was that experience and recovery like for you? And is anything different with a stoma versus without one?
So I had my C-section under general anesthetic because I've got sciatica and like type of well, I guess sciatica is a type of nerve damage. It's like a trapped nerve, which got worse after stoma surgery. So the idea of having a spinal block or an epidural, I felt long term in life was not going to be good for me because I wanted to be not fit and healthy, but I wanted to be the best that I could be for Odin as
Yeah.
he grows up without adding to the back pain and mobility issues that I already was facing. And then also, I've got really bad medical PTSD, so procedures and things like that that they would normally do under local is horrendously traumatizing for me. And I was getting myself in such a state, but it was always planned to be under general, thank goodness. So when I woke up, um, it was really awful for the first 24 to 48 hours because obviously when you're under general and obviously getting operations, you have to lie flat. And I have really bad acid reflux. Um, and it's related to a condition called GERD or JORD, which is where you get excessive like acid and bile in your stomach. So because I was lying so flat, I got like this phlegm stuff like trapped in my chest and I couldn't cough because I was so much pain from the C-section. I couldn't cough it up. And I was like spewing up and I was trying to cough with a pillow around my C-section scar because they advised to do that. And then they gave me a nebulizer, I think it's called. It's like a mask that they put round and they
Yeah.
put steam in it, and that eventually helped. And they were like, right, we're on the ball now. Like we're getting her better. Um, so for the first 24 hours, I was completely unable to care for Odin, but the team at the recovery ward, which normally you would go to there first and then you'd go back to the labour ward, but they
Yeah.
kept me there because of how ill I was. They were amazing. They were like, "Look, we're changing his bum, and look, he's having a wee bottle, and would you like a cuddle?" And they'd take him over to me and then put him back,
Oh.
and they'd make me a cup of tea and make me toast and be like, "Right, what medication do you need?" Um, and I was on a really powerful other opioid. I've no idea what it actually is, but it's called Shortec. But I had it via a pump. Um, so the next day I was taken off that, and then I had it oral because I was stopping being sick, and I was like, that's fine. So I got home on day 3 of my C-section, and I was taking paracetamol and tramadol. And the only real issue I found in recovery really was the dressings, because obviously my stomach had stretched from carrying a baby.
Hmm.
Where the C-section was quite low down, but because of where the dressing needed to be, it's called a pressure dressing. Um, it like went underneath the flange of my stoma, so I couldn't even cut it to shape underneath on the flange because then I would have no coverage of the stoma to stick to my skin.
Yeah.
So when I had my first shower, it came off, but there was like a another one underneath which was yellow. So then that made the recovery easier because I was able to change my bag more. Um, and then on day 10, it was okay to take that yellow one off. So I did that in the shower. Um, or was it day 7? I think it was day 7 actually that um I think it was day 5 the white one came off, and day 7 the yellow one came off. And then by day 10, externally, like on the outside, my C-section scar had healed.
Wow, that's amazing.
So yeah, and it's so different to bowel surgery. It was, I wouldn't say it was a breeze, but compared to bowel surgery, it was definitely a breeze.
What's life been like as a mum?
It's hard, but it's extremely rewarding. Um, it honestly is amazing. It's like a feeling I've never felt, like just to have so much love for something so small. Um, and I think I find the hardest part about being a mum is that how can I explain it? Like with time, like it just goes by so quick. Like he 1 minute he was like this tiny little thing, and now he's just like running around on his own, like drinking his own juice and like feeding himself, and I'm just like, oh my
Bless
gosh,
him.
like you're growing up so much. Oh, but it's just great. Yeah.
And just my kind of last question for you would be, what advice would you give to anyone who has had stoma surgery and is looking to conceive? Would you have, is there any, potentially anyone they should consult beforehand, or anything that they should just be mindful of going into the experience?
So I think if you are in your trying to conceive journey, um, it's always advised to start taking folic acid. And that's one of the advice I've had, that midwives have said, like, are you making sure you're taking your folic acid? Were you taking it before pregnancy? I wasn't taking it before pregnancy, but I had tried it um, when the year after, when I was trying to conceive.
Mm.
So me and Jamie were both taking um, pre-pregnancy vitamins. So, I mean, it's really important that, especially with your IBD team, if you are on a medication to maintain your condition or conditions, that if as soon as you fall pregnant, you must let them know. It's really important because some medications, for example, methotrexate, you cannot get pregnant on it,
That's good.
because methotrexate has other uses as well, and it's mostly used for ectopic pregnancies to get rid of the pregnancy. So there's a huge risk of that happening.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, definitely consulting with your IBD team or whatever team it is that's looking after you, or maybe your GP, just to help you kind of look at, all medications, like a plan, and then obviously you don't get your first scan until 12 weeks. But definitely consulting with anybody that's in charge of your care, but especially like a more consultant type team, because they know you best and your conditions and medications.
Alannah, thank you so much for coming on and being so open, but also giving such useful, practical advice for people. I'm sure it'll be really appreciated.
I hope so. And I just want everybody to know as well that, no pregnancy is the same. As I say, some pregnancies can be just a total breeze for some people, and other people, unfortunately, like myself, it just hasn't been. And my pregnancy is not a reflection on pregnancy with a stoma in general. It really is just luck of the draw.
Alannah, thank you so much. And hopefully, we can have you back on the pod to discuss another topic at some point soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you. Have you seen the new Ostique skins yet? Ostique skins are revolutionary ostomy pouch covers that were created to make the wearer feel confident, sexy, and powerful in all of life's moments. From moments of intimacy to lounging by the pool, conquering a workout, or simply heading out to lunch, skins have you covered. Even better, they're compatible with all major colostomy and ileostomy bags. Ostique skins are available in a range of colours and skin tones, and they're made from a revolutionary material that's completely waterproof, high quality, soft and comfortable. Skins are easy to use, even with reduced dexterity, and they work with both closed and drainable bags. Plus, skins are also environmentally friendly and vegan. There are 4 bundles available to buy now, and you can also purchase individual skins. Head to ostique.co.uk to find out more.